the combination of going to speak to student athletes while also thinking about my story kind of like merged together. And I just started writing. I was stuck. I couldn't go anywhere. I was stuck in my hotel room and I couldn't go anywhere. I just started writing. And I started maybe at 17 years old. And I just kept writing, just stories and poems and people who have impacted me and the experiences that I had as a Gamecock.
Well, welcome into another edition of South Carolina Sideline, everybody. I am so excited for today's episode because I am joined by a true Gamecock icon, a true Gamecock legend, someone who is so beloved by Gamecock Nation, Marcus Lattimore, joining our show today. Marcus, welcome to our podcast. Welcome to our show. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you, Matt. I'm excited to be on. What's up, South Carolina? I miss y'all.
I know they miss you too, and you are joining us from Portland, which is where you and your family live. How long have you been in Portland? How long have you been in the Pacific Northwest?
It's going on 5 years now. I left South Carolina early of 2020, so it was right before the pandemic, which, people say it's probably not the best time to move, but actually it ended up being nice because we were able to explore a lot outside because nobody was in the parks. And my wife and we really love just being outdoors and exploring, what the Northwest has to offer. So yeah, it's been about 5 years now, and it hasn't been an easy transition, but it's been a transition that was critical for our growth in our respective professions and our marriage. So
When you say that, I know before I was saying, before we started the show, I've never been to the Pacific Northwest. So it's one part of the country I haven't gotten to go to yet. What was it about that area of the country that you guys thought would help you grow as individuals, as a married couple, as a family? What was it about that area?
yeah, the solitude. It's a hidden part of America that you know beautiful when you look at the pictures, but when you really get here and you hear about all the stories about how it rains so much. It's just torrential downpours 9 months throughout the year, and that's true, and that takes some time to get adjusted to. But it was really the solitude for us, and I mean, the rain produces such forest green abundance everywhere. And my wife and we would just really love being outside, and um, we came our roles in society in South Carolina were we had a lot of responsibility. Just ultimately, honestly, just being public figures, we had a lot of things that we had to do and places we had to be, and obligations and responsibilities at a very young age. And honestly, we just wanted to have a little fun. We wanted to have a little fun. We wanted to get away. It was a lot of noise in my life, in our lives, ever since we've been 17 years old. You play football and you excel at it in the state of South Carolina. Everybody knows who you are, and you become a model, and which is a role I took wholeheartedly, and I grew so much interacting with people and having speaking engagements. But I think it was time for me personally to sit back, cut off the noise, uh, immerse myself into solitude and silence, and really find out, who am I outside of the state of South Carolina? Who am I outside of a football jersey? Because I didn't know that answer. Everywhere I went, I was number 21, which again is something now I look at and I'm honored that I got to wear that role. but there are so many more facets to me that I needed to discover.
And so the nature really kind of helped with that piece, finding that tranquility. Before we get into, because you have a new book that's out, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. I'm very, very excited to talk about the book. But for that area of the country, the nature part of it, to bring that tranquility, that peace of mind, was nature something that you had always connected with? Was that always something as an outlet to, bring you peace, to bring you kind of a getaway, a place to, escape and kind of get your mind together? Or was that something that you connected with later in life?
Well, I think I connected with it in a different way when I was younger. I mean, I had always been on grass. I had always been outside playing, just either playing with my friends or playing in competition, baseball and football and, just outside. And so I connected with nature in a different way, and it was through sports. And it brought me solace. Sports did bring me solace, and it gave me something to do. I was, coached by amazing human beings who helped me. But I think it was just something nature. We are nature, So it was really me connecting back to myself. Um, where did the idea started to loom just from exploring different ways of thinking. You know, I I've been blessed to travel all over the world because of the game of football. And I spent some time in San Francisco, where the line of thinking is completely different than it is in South Carolina, which is not a good thing or bad thing. It's just the way it is. And I started to explore different ways of thinking. I mean and that led me more towards thinking about, like, I started reading more writers who talk about the healing powers of just being in the forest. You pick up a book by John Muir, and he talks about the West Coast, in a mystical way, in a spiritual way, and that those words kind of like uh I gravitated towards those words, and it's just really been a daily thing for us, like, and there's science behind it. There's science behind spending time in the forest and what it can do for your blood pressure, physiologically, what it can do, but also just for my mind. I think it was the perfect combination for where I was in my life. I needed to slow down, get away, get out of concrete and go to green.
And how hard was that? When you are in a place where you are so loved, so recognizable, you have a life here. How hard is that to say, I need something else. I need to change. My family needs a change, all of that. How hard is that to not only realize that, but then to do it?
Hmm. Externally, it was extremely difficult, because, where I come from, I mean, having financial mobility, upward mobility financially, that was the goal, to be set, you know, um, just to be set financially. And you have a house, you have a car, you have all of the material things that you need to thrive and to feel safe within yourself. So externally, it was extremely hard and scary. Like, what am I going to do about living? How am I going to make money? But internally, I it wasn't hard at all. Because I knew if I stayed in South Carolina, ultimately I could just sit on my butt and not do much and not challenge myself and not learn a new skill. And, that future, seeing that future kind of scared me. I needed to challenge myself because I'd always, been somebody who wanted to grow as a human being, or grow as an athlete. Well, now it was time for me to grow as a human being, and I just couldn't do that, uh, encased in a world of love, which is kind of seems kind of seems contradictory, but for me internally, it just wasn't. I had to remove myself from the admiration and adulation to um, really just spread my wings.
That's a good transition into the book because I know you have a new book out and you're very, very excited about it. I know a lot of Gamecock fans are excited about it too. So many of them have been, putting on social media that like their copy arrived and they're reading it by the pool this summer. But the book is titled Scream My Name, and it is a performance piece, and poetry has become such a big part of your life. First, when did poetry become a big part of your life? When was that something that really came into your life and became an essential part of who you are?
Man, I have to take a step back and say it started with journaling.
Hmm.
Uh, Journaling, just my thoughts and my feelings and my emotions, became a daily practice around the end of 2019. Uh, right around when I was 2019, October, when I was being inducted into the University of South Carolina Athletics Hall of Fame, that night really illuminated a lot for me in like internally. And I came to a point in my life where I realized, is this all it's going to be? Like, I'm just going to be celebrated for my football career. And I'm just going to be known as Marcus Lattimore, the Gamecock, number 21. Which again, now I look at it from a completely different perspective. I see how beautiful that is, but during that time, it was just I needed more. I needed more out of life, and I started journaling how I really felt about this experience that I was having during the Hall of Fame banquet, and it was a lot of dread and just like, man, what am I gonna do? Like, who am I? That question, who am I, started to loom. And I just started asking that question to myself more in my journal and, just getting my thoughts and feelings out on paper. And I started to self analyze and self introspect some of the destructive behaviors that I had built over the years during college that I hid from public light. I had to come to terms with that. I was just really looking at myself for the first time because I never really had to. I never really had to look at myself because I was I was Marcus Lattimore. I was number 21. I was this uh perfect citizen. And that just I had to start being honest with myself. And to say it, I had no clue what was going on. I was and I know I'm not the only person that's ever been through this, like just a self-realization that maybe there's more to life than what you think it is. But this is my story. This is just my story, which is where I go into the book. And poetry came after I got to a place where I felt comfortable enough to explore with words and create with words. Because at first it was really just me spilling my heart onto the paper. And then I realized that, I'm kind of having fun with this a little bit. I'm kind of enjoying it. And yeah, I realized that poetry, I started reading more poetry. I think it started with that, just reading more poetry, listening to Lauryn Hill, and um, just a lot of liberating human beings who talk about the inner world in a poetic way, and in rhythm and in cadence, and that just became exciting for me. I went down this rabbit hole. I found the vault of Oscar Brown Jr. and Allen Ginsberg, and I realized, oh, they're speaking poetry in cadence, in rhythm, and it's a little bit theatrical. And I was just like, huh, what is this? What is this performance poetry? And that's when it clicked for me. Okay, this is the lane I'm gonna stick with. I really like this.
Going back to one thing you said, so The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is one of my favorite albums of all
Mm.
time. It's so deep. It's a genius album. I honestly think it's a perfect album. Was that did that album speak to you in a way because music is a form of poetry and the way that
No
she
doubt.
constructed that album is just a genius work of art. So was that album a huge part of your love for poetry?
Matt, I love that album. However, it's her underground work
Oh,
that
okay.
really spoke to me. It was the MTV album from 2002, I want to say, where she did the entire album live. It was 18 songs on MTV set. And this was after she went through her self transformation. She went through a transformation, and the songs were raw. They were, you can hear her voice crack. You can hear like the unedited Lauryn Hill without the mastering and the mixing from the album. And she has so many songs on there that just connect with my soul. And I was just like, whoa, this is different. She's talking about some things that human beings really don't talk about, because it's all about public perception. But she was talking about her inner life. And that was, which she does on Miseducation of Lauryn Hill as well. But this one was just a little bit more gritty and raw, and which is why I think it spoke to me.
So after all of your inspiration with poetry, with music, when did the idea of a book come to the forefront? How did this book come to fruition?
I will say that the book is sprinkled with poetry. It's a good bit of stories in there more than anything. It's sprinkled with a little bit of poetry, but Matt, this book spawned out of a request from UCLA football team. I was planning to go speak to the UCLA football team early this year. I mean, I think it may have been 2024, the end of 2024, early January 2025. And, you know, honestly, I had no clue what I was going to say because I hadn't been in the college football arena in so long. And when I got on the plane, it was actually January. And I got on the plane and I'm landing from Portland, going down to LAX. I'm landing and I see the entire Santa Ana mountains are just orange, just from fire, the fires that engulfed LA. And I'm just like, oh, well, I guess this talk ain't happening, and, I get off the plane and, the sky is gray and black. And ultimately, I get a call from the director of player development at UCLA telling me this is not going to happen. So I'm stuck in my room. I'm stuck in my hotel room. And I, the combination of going to speak to student athletes while also thinking about my story kind of like merged together. And I just started writing. I started writing. I was stuck. I couldn't go anywhere. I was stuck in my hotel room and I couldn't go anywhere. I just started writing. And I started maybe at 17 years old. And I just kept writing, just stories and poems and people who have impacted me and um, the experiences that I had as a Gamecock, the great experiences, the high experiences, the low experiences, and I just kept writing for the next 2 to 3 months. Um, I didn't hire an editor for this one at least, and it came out just so organically. So it spawned from that request from UCLA, and then I just kept writing.
There's a lot of poetry in that as well, of writing all of that while all of this is going on around you. That's very, very interesting. What did that feel like for you in that moment? Was it liberating? Was it emotional, writing all of that in that moment? What was that experience like?
Oh, uh, it was a release.
Mm,
It was the first time I think UCLA gave me the courage to look at my Gamecock career, which was filled with a lot of highs, but I shied away from it because of the lows
mm,
and the pain and the injuries and uh, just like some of the experiences that I had in my early 20s, like really just looking back on my life and really I didn't treat a lot of people right, although it looked like I did. Um, it was the first time I could honor my experience, like really give it the honor that it deserves, like through the good, through the bad. This is my life and this is my story, and I should accept it wholeheartedly and embrace all parts of me, not just this new poetic dude.
mm.
I should embrace my athletic career as well. Somebody actually pointed it out to me. I think I was on Johnny Manziel's podcast. He said, I scroll down your page and I don't see anything about football. And I didn't even realize it at that moment. There is nothing on my Instagram page about football. And it was probably because I hadn't come to terms with um, my experience and how it ended. I was supposed to play 8 years in the NFL and rush for 10,000 yards. That was my plan at least, but that didn't happen. And um, I just wasn't accepting all of me. And it was the first time I could look at my story. So it was a release. It was a release, and I didn't sleep that night. Um, it was interesting. It was very spiritual, I would say.
And I think that is one thing, even though everyone might not have the same story as you, as far as like being such a prominent athlete and having these professional dreams, I think everyone can relate to having a dream and maybe life doesn't go the way you thought it would, and I think that's something that everybody can connect with because life is a roller coaster and we all have our plan of like, okay, it's going to go this way, this way, this way, this way. And you're kind of taking all these other directions, and life just doesn't always work out in the way that you thought it would, but it's meant to work out in the way it was always supposed to be, I guess. And I think too, as guys, I think our natural tendency is to hide the emotion, hide the vulnerability, be
Mm.
strong, do all that kind of stuff. But in reality, especially for people in public positions like yourself, vulnerability, I think people love that. I think people end up, connecting with you even more when you're vulnerable. But I think we think, okay, everyone's going to judge me, everyone's going to hate me, they're going to think I'm stupid or soft or like whatever it is. When in reality, this book and you opening up is going to make people connect with you and hopefully help people in a way that, maybe they didn't see coming. I don't know. I don't know if you agree with that but that's kind of what I'm taking away from it.
I 100% agree. I mean, I'm telling my story and I'm not giving lessons. Like I thought about doing a book, like in the future, like 5 lessons I've learned or 20, using my jersey number 21 lessons I've learned from my life. But that, and I think that's beautiful, because I read those types of books. But I didn't do that type of book. I'm just telling my story and some experiences that I've had, like athletically that, are entertaining, I would think. And also just a lot of self-introspection in it as well, like just looking at my life and trying to figure out who am I and just like asking all these different types of questions and experiences that I've had that kind of showed me, oh, maybe it's not what you intended it to be. Yeah, I just left it open for interpretation, and whatever people take from it, they take from it, and uh, hopefully, yes, that's the goal that it helps someone. But It's just me in my rawest form.
I'm a poetry fan myself. I don't dive into it as much as I would like, but I do love poetry, and there's so many different types of styles of poetry. How would you
Yeah.
describe your poetic style?
Ooh. Oh man. Matt, I think I unconsciously made the decision when I moved to Oregon that if I wasn't having fun, then I wasn't gonna do it. Because I really wasn't having a lot of fun.
Hmm.
I wanted to reignite that kindergartner within me. And my poetry, particularly my performance poetry, I think people would describe it as comedic,
Okay.
uh, which is some of the poetry that I love to read, like Lawrence Ferlinghetti or, um, just people who make light of situations, uh, and use their voice in creative, funky ways. Um, I would describe it as playful, comedic, but also there's a philosophical type of texture to it. It's it leans towards definitely leans towards I want self introspection. Like I'm
Mhm.
looking at myself, but I'm not battering myself. I'm looking at myself with a little bit of lightness, you know. But again, like I just wrote a poem about uh, where do the birds go when missiles blow? And that just happened, when I was talking to my wife about thinking about like the firecrackers on 4th of July, what happens to the birds? So we just having a conversation and I'm thinking like, what about the birds in Ukraine or the birds in Palestine or the birds in, just in the Middle East at this moment and or South Sudan, where do they go? Like when all this heavy artillery, so I mean I don't know whatever the present moment hands me is really what happens with the poetry. Um, but I would say it's comedic, light. I take a lot of inspiration from comedians. I
Hmm.
think that I see the poetry in comedy, particularly somebody like a Robin Williams.
Yeah.
He was an energizer bunny, but if you really listen to what he's saying, he has a cadence in there. He has similes. He has metaphors, alliteration. I mean, it's just beautiful.
Do you perform, by the way? Do you perform poetry?
Yeah, I was. That was how I. That's if I have to pick a art medium of expression, that is my art medium.
Mm.
Here in Portland, I mean, there's a spoken word going on just about every night, and
Yeah.
I've been to over, I'd say probably 100 spoken words and performed
Mm.
over 100 times here in Portland and um, up and down the Northwest.
Yeah.
It's I, there's just another element to it, when you can see somebody's face and hear
Mm.
their voice and cadence. I've done some theater here in Portland,
Mm.
so I'm just leaving the door open for all types of expression.
Um, Going off of that, I grew up in theater. My mom was a high school theater teacher for 30 years.
Oh
I'm
wow.
minored in theater at Wake Forest University. So, and I grew up an athlete as well. I didn't get to the level that you got at, but I was one of those kids that did both. I had the sports, I had the art, and the art always unlocked something in my brain that sports couldn't really give me in a creative sense. And I don't know if you feel that way too in this journey, in this poetic journey of yours. Do you feel like poetry and this artistic side has given you something that maybe football and that competition could not?
Oh my goodness. That's such a good question, man. Me, Matt, when I watch the game of football now versus when I wasn't in the arts. When I watch the game of football now, I can see the poetry in it.
Mm.
I can see uh, a running back and take a handoff and just his mind working and how his hips swivel through defenders. He skinnies himself, to get between a gap that's about 6 inches wide. I mean, I just see the game from a completely different perspective. Such a beautiful game, and the strategy behind it, and offensive coordinators, how they draw up these different wide receiver combinations to expose a part of the field that was covered at once, but they manipulate the defenders to get. I mean, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful game from a
Yeah.
poetic perspective. From who I used to be. I mean, I thought it was all about being the most violent, which is I think is part of it.
Mhm.
You have to be tough, you have to be violent, but there's also a fluidity to the game of football that is needed, a calm essence that is needed in the game of football. I think now, which is really interesting. You know how your brain can change.
What is your advice to the athletes now? Because the game has changed so much, even in the last 4 years. I mean, it's a completely different ball game, with everything that has happened with NIL, with the transfer portal. What is your advice to college athletes now?
Oh, well, I can't tell them not to worry about money, you know. So I would say, get all the money you can, but stock it and bond it and learn it and invest it, and so you can live off some of that money. I would say uh, read. I would say read a lot, uh, and know that you are multidimensional.
Yeah.
There are so many more dimensions to you. Uh, but in terms of the NIL, I would say get all of it you can. Get people around you trust. Stock the money, bond the money, invest the money. Learn how money works, and learn that money isn't the thing that you're looking for. Like I thought that was the thing,
Yeah.
at that age. You're looking for money, you're looking for more pleasure. You just more pleasure in life. You think the goal of life is pleasure
Mhm.
and making more money. But oh man, I realized through my 20s that it's not about pleasure and it's not about how much money you have. There's something inner inside of you that you have to get in touch with, to find that contentment that you're looking for.
Mm. Marcus, before we wrap up, I didn't realize that I didn't upgrade to Zoom Pro, so I've got like it's got a countdown on me, like 4 minutes. Before we wrap up today, how can people buy your book, and where can they find it, and all of that good stuff? Because I know that so many Gamecock fans are going to still want to support you in these, coming weeks and read your book this summer.
Yes. So it's available right now on Amazon. Scream My Name, a performance piece, Marcus Lattimore. If you just type that in, it'll come right up. However, I will be back in South Carolina early September,
Oh,
and I will have copies. I will have copies on me. I'm planning a few performances around the city, so I'll make sure to keep you uh, to let you know about that.
yeah,
At a
please
few
do.
bookstores and also at Gamecock Tailgate. So I want to perform some poetry. I got some new stuff. I'm gonna perform some things from the book, but I also got some new stuff that I've been working on, performance pieces that I want to perform for the fans.
Well, we will definitely be there for that. That sounds like a lot of fun. Marcus, this has been a really fun conversation. It's kind of been like therapeutic for me a little bit. It's been it's been really fun to talk poetry and to talk a different side of you that I don't think a lot of people have gotten to know or maybe don't know. So this has been really fun. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
Oh, thank you, Matt. I mean, like it's always, nice to connect with someone within that literary
Mhm.
world of who understands like the healing powers of poetry.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you, Marcus. And thank you so much again for coming on our podcast, for coming on our show. I know, you're an A-lister in Colombia. So I didn't know if you were going to say yes. And I hope you know how appreciative I am of you taking this much time to talk about this chapter of your life, because I know it has been transformative and it has been huge for you. And I always want everyone who comes on our show to know how appreciative I am of their time, because I don't like wasting people's time. I like making it useful. And I'm really, really, really honored that you came on our show to talk about this.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Marcus. I'll see you later, man. This has been fun. Let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Let's talk soon.
All right. See you, man. Thank you.
Thank you.